Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom.
In our top story, the Pentagon has warned that Israel remains under grave threat from Iran and its proxy armies who have vowed to destroy the Jewish state. U.S. National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby said Iran remains postured and prepared, and for that reason, America maintains a robust military presence in the region. America's top general, Charles Brown, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was in Israel last week, where he said that Iran still poses a significant threat to Israel. The radical Islamic Republic continues to race toward nuclear breakout while training, funding, and directing its proxy armies throughout the globe to attack the Jewish state.
The Iranian-backed Hezbollah terror group in Lebanon was delivered a devastating blow to its missile capabilities by Israel last week after a massive bombing raid destroyed over 6,000 rockets, drones, and rocket launchers aimed at the Jewish state. The strike was described as a preemptive attack ahead of a planned Hezbollah bombardment of Israel. The Israeli raid caught Hezbollah completely by surprise. They only managed to fire around 300 rockets and weaponized drones at Israel. Most were intercepted by the Iron Dome missile defense system. However, since October 7th, the Iranian-backed terrorist proxy has fired thousands of rockets into Israel, prompting the evacuation of 80,000 Israelis from their homes in northern Israel. More than 90% of these missiles were launched from within civilian areas in Lebanon. Thousands of acres of land in the Golan Heights and the Upper Galilee have burned, and many homes have been destroyed by the Hezbollah attacks.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned Iran and Hezbollah that the recent Israeli strike on the terror group in Lebanon is not the end of the story. This comes as Islamic states and armies throughout the world have threatened a broader conflict with the Jewish state. Addressing the Knesset during a weekly cabinet meeting, Netanyahu said, Nasrallah in Beirut and Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Tehran should know that this is another step on the path to changing the situation in the north and returning our residents safely to their homes. IDF Chief Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi added that Israel is determined to change the security situation in the north so that the residents can return safely to their homes.
The far-left New Communist Party of Italy has published a list of 150 Jews it says should be condemned and fought because of their support for Israel. The document, titled Zionist Organizations and Agents in Italy, contains the names of some of Italy's most prominent citizens, as well as popular media, business, and political figures. The party posted the list to its website. The action drew an immediate backlash from other Italian political parties. Some have demanded a parliamentary inquiry into the incident. The Jewish community of Rome released a statement saying this is the latest episode in a string of acts pointing to a resurgent anti-Semitism that increasingly raises its voice and the level of its threats.
The pro-Hamas protest groups that took college campuses hostage last year are planning major disruptions during the new school year. The Student Intifada, a growing organization of pro-terror and anti-Israel groups, has announced that it will disrupt the fall semester on campuses throughout the United States. This umbrella organization has already radicalized its creed, and many of its members have been heard shouting death to Israel and calling for the total eradication of Western civilization. It has also established a prominent internet presence by spreading hate and propaganda through social media. The group has already demanded that universities ban Jewish student organizations, as well as so-called Zionist speakers.
In a related story, more non-Jewish college students feel hostility toward their Jewish peers and Israel. According to a recent survey conducted by Brandeis University, research indicates that about one-third of non-Jewish college students embraced ideas hostile to Jews or Israel during the 2023 and 2024 academic year. The study found that about 15% of U.S. college students were antagonistic toward Israel, with many believing that the Jewish state has no right to exist. In addition, the findings also reveal that 25% of non-Jewish students said they do not want to be friends with people who support Israel's existence as a Jewish state.
The chief rabbi of South Africa slammed his government's decision to recall its diplomatic staff from Israel in protest of the war in Gaza. Rabbi Warren Goldstein released a statement saying South Africa, together with all of the opponents of the State of Israel, are in fact the useful idiots of Iran. He said that decision, along with threatening the Israeli ambassador with expulsion, shows this government is supporting Iran and its proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah's goals of destroying the State of Israel and spreading global jihad. Rabbi Goldstein also accused the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury of effectively rejecting the Bible by negating the covenant between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. He said the world is locked in a civilizational battle of values, threatened by terrorism and jihad. Now is the time for religious leaders to come to the defense of society and to speak up for Western values.
The Canadian Revenue Agency has abruptly revoked the charity status of the Jewish National Fund without warning or investigation. Lance Davis, the CEO of JNF Canada, said his organization has had an agreement with the Canadian Revenue Agency since 1967. Now, more than 50 years later, the CRA has ruled that the JNF's work funding new immigrants and providing them with employment is not a charitable project and that the organization can no longer enjoy its previous status. The Canadian Jewish community has been plagued by violence, vandalism, and hateful protest against Israel and the Jewish people. Canadian police report that anti-Semitic incidents have risen by 70% since October 7th, when Hamas terrorists infiltrated the Jewish state, murdered 1,200 people, and kidnapped 253 others to Gaza. And here's another alarming statistic. In a single day last week, over 100 Canadian synagogues and Jewish organizations received bomb threats.
The Jewish state celebrated the news of the rescue of Qaid Farhan al-Qadi from Hamas captivity in Gaza last week. The 52-year-old Bedouin father of 11 children was working as a security guard at a factory on October 7th when Hamas terrorists infiltrated the Jewish state, slaughtered 1,200 people, and took 253 others hostage. Al-Qadi was discovered alive and in stable condition within the terror tunnels Hamas constructed underneath Gaza. The IDF believes that 104 hostages remain captive in the Gaza Strip, which includes the bodies of 34 hostages that have been declared dead.
Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has issued a call to extend the freedom of religion, which is afforded to all faiths in Israel, to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. He said just as Muslims are welcome to worship at the Western Wall, Jews and Christians should have the right to worship on the Temple Mount. Israel liberated the old city of Jerusalem from the Jordanians in 1967 and ascended Mount Moriah, where both the first and second Jewish temples once stood. Israel allowed the Jordanian Waqf to retain authority over the holy site in an attempt to appease the surrounding Muslim nations. The Waqf heavily restricts non-Muslim access to the Temple Mount and strictly forbids Jews and Christians from praying there. Ben-Gvir has instructed Israeli police not to disturb non-Jews worshiping on the site and has even proposed building a synagogue there.
More Jews are immigrating to Israel or making Aliyah despite the war. According to a report released by Israel's Ministry of Aliyah and Integration in conjunction with the Jewish Agency and the World Zionist Organization, more than 29,000 Jews have made Aliyah since October 7th. And even more Jews are planning their prophetic return to their historic homeland. The Global Aliyah Center noted that since the onset of the war with Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Iran, more than 30,000 Jews have opened files expressing their intent to move to Israel. One significant data point is the increase in number of Jews from Western countries interested in making Aliyah. The report states that there has been a 355% increase in Aliyah files opened in France, a 62% increase from the United States, an 87% rise in Canada, and a 63% jump among Jews in the United Kingdom. Major General Doron Almog, the chairman of the Jewish agency, said, "This exciting data about the immigrants coming to our land reflects their commitment and great love for the state of Israel. They strengthen and inspire us during these difficult days. The arrival of new immigrants to the state of Israel symbolizes hope, and I congratulate them on their arrival."
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. We're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Josh Waller. He's the spokesman for Hayovel. Josh, thanks for being on the show.
Josh, thanks for having me.
Josh, tell us a little about Hayovel.
Hayovel was established back in 2004 when my father made his first trip to Israel. We were raised Christian Zionist. We wanted to serve and be a part of the nation of Israel in some way. I grew up a farmer in Tennessee, and upon that first visit, it just totally changed our life. When we asked the Jewish people, was there a place for us here? And they said, yes, we need your help. We need non-Jews to be a part of the story. We need people that love Israel to come and serve and then take that message that you get here and take it back home and share it abroad. So just a massive moment in our lives was that recognition that there's work to do by the non-Jewish community and that there's room, and the Jewish community was welcoming to us to come and serve. So all that began in our personal family in 2004 when we came, and that welcome was there to us, and we went back home. We sold our farm. I mean, coming from a farming background in rural Tennessee, we didn't know any Jewish people. So you got to think we had an Israeli flag in our house. We loved Israel, but we didn't know any Jewish people. We loved the Jewish people. We loved Israel. And when we had that opportunity to come and serve, it was like just a moment. It was like, wow, what an incredible honor to come. So we've been serving now for 20 years, and mostly in agriculture throughout the area of Judea and Samaria.
Well, that's interesting. Christians love Israel. Bible-believing Christians support Israel. It's a known fact now. A lot of our political support, a lot of our financial support, a lot of our moral support comes from Bible-believing Christians. But you actually focus on an area in Israel, which is Judea and Samaria. You have determined that Judea and Samaria is the place that has called you to work. Why there?
I think all of Israel obviously is significant, but there's a frontline war that's going on for the area of Judea and Samaria. Most people know it as the West Bank. It's one of the biggest, most ingenious ideas of the anti-Israel Arab regime, if we will call it that created the term West Bank and delegitimized the entire area for most Christians. Remember, we just talked about Bible belief. Like the entire Bible base of the world has now thought that the Bible area is the biblical heartland of Israel is now some sort of bank, small little chunk of insignificant land. What a brilliant move, right? Well, it's not. It's the biblical heartlands where all the Bible takes place. And we focus there because that battle is still raging. The international community doesn't believe in its significance. And Israel at home is having a hard time fighting that war. So we're bringing support where it's most needed.
Hayovel has been working in Israel for 20 years, but since October 7th, you've gotten a lot of publicity, a lot of acclaim for what you're doing. You brought over cowboys from America to come and build farms and plant trees and work the land. Why was that so important to step it up after October 7th?
Well, I think the international support, again, was everybody thought that all the nations would be like, well, of course we need to support Israel. Well, the opposite happened. Everybody gave it a few days, and the world started coming unglued on Israel, not the terrorists. And so we really felt it necessary to up our support. And, thank God when we brought a team of cowboys, it went viral. And so those kind of things helped to bring that support to Israel that we intended to bring. And we continue to do our best to bring in the support that we believe is due to Israel. The nations have responsibility to bring support, encouragement to the Jewish people. We feel like it's a mandate. I mean, it goes all the way back for Christians and Jews alike to Genesis 12. We feel like we both read these verses together. But for Christians, we're the non-Jewish people that are going to be blessed by that encounter, right? So we just encourage the nation to come, bless, serve the Jewish people, and then maybe if God sees fit, there'll be a blessing to come back. But I believe that's a critical part of the nation's role.
You know, a lot of Christians understand Genesis 12:3. They understand it as a commandment, but they don't understand that it's actually a location as well.
Right.
There is the Mount of Blessings.
Sure.
There is the Mount of Curse. You
Sure.
can go there and see it.
Yeah.
You work that area. That's the area where you have your base of operations.
Sure.
Why is it so important to be in Genesis 12:3?
Well, I think one of the most significant things is you're connected to the Bible. We're not harvesting grapes in California, or you're not planting vines and putting forestry and helping establish Jewish presence. This is it's a specific location, and the same location that Jeremiah spoke of when he says in Jeremiah 31, you'll plant vines on the mountains of Samaria. It's like it's that specific regional area that the prophets all envisioned would come. So it's deeper than even helping and establishing and strengthening the Jewish communities. It's a prophetic thing that the prophets all envisioned would one day happen. And so it has so much more the incredible vision of the prophets becoming alive after 2,000 years is something that a lot of Christians may not also understand, that it's not so high in the sky. It's like you're literally going to the shed and you're grabbing a shovel, you're planting a vine. It's something physical on the exact location that the prophets foresaw that it would happen. So it's extremely encouraging.
In a super controversial move, the Biden administration has sanctioned individuals and organizations living in Judea and Samaria in the middle of a hot war. Not the terrorists. They're actually sanctioning Israelis. Are you concerned that they may turn on you as well?
Of course, we talk about it all the time. Our staff team and our leadership, we're constantly talking about what's going on. This is insane. They sanctioned the wrong guy. I mean, it's just a ridiculous thing that's going on where the sanctions don't seem to have a lot of strategic, it's this misinformation at its finest. You're like, the guys that I know that are sanctioned, I mean, these are people that we serve and are working with. I ask them, well, what's going on? They have no idea. They're like, why would a farmer be sanctioned? We're talking about a guy that's out shepherding sheep and, he's got a beautiful family and farm and it's very clear. The Biden administration's goals are to establish a Palestinian state. And these farmers stand in the way of that goal. So, this is a unbelievable reality that these farmers are facing.
Josh, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
It's time that we, as the supporters of Israel around the world, don't just sit back and watch. We're not just sitting on the couch. We're engaging.
Thank you, Josh, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
Donald Trump's presidency marked a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy, especially concerning Iran and the broader Middle East. His approach was based on a clear understanding that Iran is an extremist, anti-American terror state. Trump's policy decisions had a profound impact on Israel, a key U.S. ally in the region, and reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the entire Middle East. One of the most pivotal moments in Trump's Iran policy was his decision to withdraw the United States from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The JCPOA, commonly known as the Iran nuclear deal, was negotiated under the Obama administration in 2015. It aimed to limit Iran's nuclear capabilities in exchange for lifting economic sanctions. Trump criticized the agreement, calling it a horrible, one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made. President Trump argued that it did not address Iran's ballistic missile program or its support for regional proxy terrorist groups that pose a clear threat to U.S. interests and allies, especially Israel. The plan did not do anything to ensure that Iran could not still develop nuclear weapons. The International Atomic Energy Agency, responsible for monitoring Iran's compliance with the JCPOA, reported multiple breaches of the agreement. President Trump frequently referred to it as the worst deal in history. The U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA led to the reinstatement of harsh economic sanctions on Tehran. The maximum pressure campaign was designed to cripple Iran's economy and force the radical Shiite state back to the negotiating table on more favorable terms. The value of Iran's currency plummeted, inflation soared, and ordinary Iranians faced increasing hardships. The sanctions also strained Iran's ability to fund its regional allies and terrorist proxies, such as Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and various militias in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. For Israel, Trump's policies were extremely beneficial. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had been a vocal critic of the JCPOA, arguing that it left Israel vulnerable to a nuclear-armed Iran. Trump's withdrawal from the deal and the subsequent sanctions were welcomed by Netanyahu, who called it a necessary step to curb Iran's regional influence and its potential nuclear capabilities. Moreover, Trump's administration took a series of other steps that aligned closely with Israeli interest. This included recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, moving the U.S. embassy there, and recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. These actions were highly supportive and bolstered Israel's position in the region. Trump's Iran policy also had broader regional implications, particularly Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who view Iran as a major regional threat. These countries largely supported Trump's tough stance against Tehran and saw it as a way to counter Iranian influence in the Middle East. This alignment of interest eventually led to the Abraham Accords, brokered under President Donald Trump's administration. These agreements, announced in August of 2020, saw the normalization of relations between Israel and several Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, followed by Sudan and Morocco. This breakthrough was historic, as it represented the first peace deals between Israel and Arab countries since the peace treaties with Egypt in 1979 and Jordan in 1994. President Trump made the Middle East a focal point of his foreign policy. He saw the accords as a cornerstone of his administration's achievements. The agreements were born out of years of behind-the-scenes negotiations involving a complex mix of diplomacy, economic incentives, and strategic alignments against common threats emanating from Iran. The accords not only brought tangible benefits such as trade deals, direct flights, and increased cooperation in various sectors, but they also symbolized a shift in regional dynamics. They demonstrated a willingness among moderate Arab states to engage with Israel based on mutual interest. Supporters hailed the Abraham Accord as a pragmatic step toward a more peaceful Middle East. Under the leadership of Donald Trump, Washington played a significant role in encouraging this alliance. By normalizing relations with Israel, these Arab states have gained closer ties with the U.S., further solidifying their security arrangements. Together, these nations aim to curb Iran's influence, deter its aggressive actions, and ensure the stability and prosperity of the region. The legacy of Donald Trump's Iran policy continues to influence U.S., Israeli, and regional strategies within the complex dynamics of the highly volatile Middle East. Up next, the ICJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Today we're in the city of Kiryat Gat, in a neighborhood where residents of Kibbutz Nir Oz moved as a temporary placement until they can return home and rebuild their community. We were privileged to be able to come alongside of them as the International Christian Embassy to help kibbutz members who lost everything on that fateful day of October 7th. And they need new household items and help reestablishing their lives. Today we're going to meet Rotem and hear how this project is impacting her and her family.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has been a voice of Christian support for Israel and connected the global church to the land of the Bible. Headquartered in Jerusalem, the ICEJ has taken action to stand with Israel by caring for Holocaust survivors, helping Jewish families return home to Israel, providing bomb shelters, fighting anti-Semitism around the world, and by inviting Christians to discover Israel for themselves.
אני רותם כהן, קיבוץ ניר עוז, נשואה ליקיר, יש לנו 3 ילדים. בני 9, 11 ו-13. באמת באותה שבת עוד נשארנו בניר עוז, למחרת הגענו לאילת. אף אחד לא ידע מה יהיה, לאן נלך. אחרי זמן, האמת היא לא ארוך, הגיעו להחלטה שנעבור לכרמי גת. אז הייתה שם עוד שהייה ממושכת באילת, לא היה פשוט שם בכלל. כל אחד רצה בית, המקום שלו, את הפינה שלו, והגענו לפה בתחילת ינואר, וניסינו להתחיל לארגן את החיים מחדש. באמת זה היה להתחיל הכל מחדש, חוץ מהעבודה, שהמקום העבודה בעצם לא השתנה. חוץ מזה, הכל השתנה. הסביבה שהיינו רגילים לחיות בה, המסגרות של הילדים, הכל היה שונה. זה לעבור מהכפר לעיר, זה שינוי לא פשוט לקיבוצניקים. עם הזמן, פשוט אין מה לעשות, צריך להסתדר עם מה שיש, להגיד תודה על מה שיש. אחרי כמה שבועות שהיינו פה, הרגשנו שאנחנו רוצים להרגיש שזה הבית שלנו, ולא בית זמני או משהו שקיבלנו בהשאלה. היה את הרצון לעשות עם זה משהו, אבל היינו צריכים משהו שיעזור לנו להניע את התהליך הזה, ובאמת הפרויקט הזה שקיבלנו לכאן בהמון שמחה, בעצם עזר לנו לתת את הפוש להתחיל לעשות משהו, כי אנחנו באמת היינו כל כך עוד בהלם, מאוד קשה לתפקד אחרי אירוע כזה. אנחנו כל הזמן מדברים על זה, על שזה פשוט מדהים כמה אנשים טובים, באמת, יש בעולם הזה, לא מכירים אותנו באופן אישי. זה לא אנשים שיש איזשהו קשר משפחתי, ולמרות זאת, הם נותנים מעצמם. שום דבר הוא לא מובן מאליו. זה גם משהו שכל הזמן אמרנו לילדים שלנו, גם כשהיינו באילת וקיבלנו שם כל מיני דברים. כל הזמן אמרנו להם, נכון, עברנו מה שעברנו, אבל זה ממש ממש לא מובן מאליו שאנשים מוכנים לתת מעצמם כל כך הרבה בשבילנו.
After Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, the ICJ has been actively standing with Israel and her people through advocacy and urgently needed aid projects. Now is the time for Christians to turn their love for Israel and the Jewish people into real action as never before. Your donation will help deliver bomb shelters to at-risk areas, provide necessary supplies for first responders, support affected citizens with trauma care, and will eventually help rebuild these devastated communities. Visit ICEJUSA.tv to donate online or call 1-800-910-6355 and give your generous gift today.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.